The galaxy had known only fire for 7 long years. Planets that once shone like jewels were now silent ashes drifting through space. The Human Alliance and the Zalari Empire had fought so fiercely that even the stars seemed to bleed. It began with a misunderstanding, but it turned into hatred. Humans called the Zalari monsters. The Zalari called humans savages. Every peace talk failed. Every truce turned into another battlefield. Millions had died. Billions had lost homes, and both sides were too proud to kneel. Then came the strange idea, a union between blood enemies. A marriage that would symbolize peace. The Empress of Zelar offered her daughter, Princess Lyrian, to the humans. In return, the Human Alliance would send one of their greatest heroes, Commander Nathan Cole, to be her husband. It was a political move, but also a desperate prayer. When the decision reached Lyrian, she was silent for a long time. She had been raised to hate humans. She had seen them in holorecords, rough creatures with blunt features and loud voices. Her tutors said they were primitive, ruled by emotion, not logic. And yet, she agreed, because she was tired of the screams. Tired of seeing mothers weep and skies burn red. On the day she was to meet her future husband, the royal palace of Zelar glittered with light. Silver banners flowed down tall crystal pillars. The nobles gathered, dressed in shining armor and elegant robes. Their eyes were cold and full of disgust. To them, the marriage was a humiliation, their princess joining hands with a human beast. When Nathan entered the throne hall, a hush fell over the crowd. He wasn't what Lyrian expected. He wore no grand armor, no crown, only a simple navy uniform. His hair was dark, his jaw strong but calm. His eyes, human eyes, held something she didn't expect. Kindness. And deep behind that kindness, something even stronger. Sorrow. He bowed low and respectful before the Empress. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "I come not as conqueror, nor captive. I come to keep peace." His voice was low and honest. Lyrian had expected arrogance, but heard humility instead. When he turned to her, he gave a faint smile. Small, tired, but real. "It's an honor, Princess," he said. "May this marriage end our war?" Lyrian didn't know how to reply. Her throat felt dry. For a moment she only stared into his human eyes, eyes that carried the weight of battle and loss. She had seen warriors before, proud and cruel. Nathan was different. He looked like a man who had already lost too much. The wedding was quiet but grand. The two stood beneath the twin suns of Zelar, their shadows long across the marble floor. The humans who came watched with guarded hope. The Zalari nobles whispered behind their hands. Some called it shame. Some called it surrender. When the priest bound their hands with the silver thread of unity, Nathan's fingers brushed hers. Warm, steady, real. She had never touched a human before. His skin was rough but gentle. The warmth spread up her arm, and for the first time Lyrian felt something unexpected. Safety. As the ceremony ended, cheers and murmurs filled the hall. Outside, soldiers lowered their weapons. Fleets halted their patrols. Across the stars, the sound of war slowly faded into silence. That night, Lyrian sat by her window, staring at the human who was now her husband. Nathan stood on the balcony looking at the sky, his hands behind his back. He didn't speak much. There was something calm about him, something steady, like a man standing on the edge of a storm and refusing to fall. She wondered what he thought of her. She wondered if he hated her people for what they had done. But when he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and sincere. "Princess," he said, "I know you didn't choose this. Neither did I, but maybe we can make it mean something." For a long time she said nothing. Then she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, "maybe we can." And as the moons of Zelar rose high in silver, Princess Lyrian realized something. Perhaps peace did not begin with empires. Perhaps it began with two people, a human and an alien, learning to understand each other. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. The days after the wedding were quiet but strange for Princess Lyrian. The palace was filled with whispers. Servants bowed but looked away quickly, as if ashamed to see a human walking through royal halls. Nobles smiled in public but mocked in private. To them, Nathan Cole was still an outsider, a symbol of weakness, not peace. But Nathan never seemed to care. He woke early every morning, before the twin suns rose, and trained in the palace courtyard. No machines, no glowing armor, and only his body. Lyrian watched from her balcony, sometimes hidden behind silk curtains. He moved with precision and focus, every strike smooth and powerful. Sweat covered his skin, but his eyes stayed calm, fixed on something distant, something deeper. To the Zalari it was strange. They trained with neural implants and energy simulators, but Nathan fought with nothing except discipline. He was human in the purest sense, like flesh, breath, and will. One morning, Lyrian finally gathered courage to speak to him. "Why do you train like that?" she asked softly. "You have weapons far stronger than fists." Nathan turned toward her, a small smile forming on his lips. "Because strength isn't in the weapon, Princess. It's in the one who decides when to use it." His answer stayed with her long after he left the courtyard. At first, Lyrian tried to keep distance. Their marriage was for peace, not love. She told herself that she didn't need to know him. But Nathan's quiet nature drew her closer. He never ordered anyone around. He thanked every servant. He ate the same food as the guards. When the Empress's council ignored him, he simply bowed and said, "I understand." He was humble, almost too humble, and it confused her. Humans were supposed to be loud, emotional, unpredictable, yet Nathan carried himself with patience that even the oldest Zalari scholars lacked. One night, during a formal dinner, an arrogant noble sneered at him across the table. "Tell me, human general," the noble said mockingly, "is it true that your kind fights with bare hands because you are too poor to afford real weapons?" Lyrian froze, expecting anger, but Nathan only took a calm sip of his drink. "Sometimes," he said softly, "a hand can save more lives than a weapon ever could." The noble went silent, unsure how to respond, and for the first time, Lyrian felt pride instead of pity. Later that night, when the palace was quiet, she found him on the balcony again, looking up at the stars. She stepped beside him. The cool air brushed her skin, and for a long moment neither spoke. "Do you miss your home?" she asked gently. Nathan smiled faintly. "Every day, but I'd rather miss my home than see another planet burn." Lyrian turned to him, studying his face. There was no bitterness, no hatred, only exhaustion and quiet resolve. She realized then that behind his calm eyes were memories of war, of people he couldn't save, of soldiers who never returned. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what he said. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to protect, and that made her heart ache in a way she didn't understand. Over the next weeks, Lyrian began to see the small things he did, helping injured soldiers rebuild, teaching Zalari guards simple first aid, or visiting the orphan halls in the lower city. He smiled at children even when the elders turned away. Wherever he went, the air felt lighter. Some called it manipulation, but Lyrian saw the truth. Nathan didn't want power. He wanted peace, and a real one, not written on paper but built by trust. One evening, while walking through the gardens, she found him sitting alone beneath a glowing crystal tree. She sat beside him silently. The air smelled of soft flowers and starlight. "Do you ever hate us?" she asked suddenly. "For what the war did?" Nathan looked up at her, eyes gentle. "Hate never ends wars, Princess. It only makes new ones." His voice was so calm, so honest, that she felt something in her heart begin to shift. She had thought humans were dangerous, but now she wondered. Maybe they were simply brave enough to love even when the universe gave them reasons not to. And as the wind moved softly through the garden, Princess Lyrian realized something she had never felt before. Her marriage was no longer just duty. It was becoming understanding. And with that understanding came the faintest spark of hope. Not for peace between worlds, but for peace between two souls who had once been enemies. For a few precious months, peace seemed real. The war had ended. Fleets rested in their hangars, and both humans and Zalari began to rebuild. The people whispered that maybe, just maybe, the marriage between Princess Lyrian and Commander Nathan Cole had truly changed fate. But peace is a fragile thing, and hatred, once born, doesn't die easily. Deep within the Zalari Empire, a group of powerful generals and nobles began to plot. They called themselves the Iron Wings. They hated humans. They hated the treaty, and most of all, they hated the idea that their princess now shared her home, her table, and her name with a human man. They called Nathan the Beast of Earth, the one who should have been executed, not crowned. In secret halls, they whispered poison. "He has bewitched the princess," said one. "He will make us slaves to his kind," said another. And with every whisper, the fire of rebellion grew. Lyrian did not know how deep the hate had spread. She saw only the surface, smiling courtiers and polite speeches. But Nathan sensed it. He had seen that look before in 100 battlefields, the calm before the storm. One morning, as he watched the soldiers training, he said quietly to her, "They do not trust me." "Not yet," she frowned. "They will in time." He shook his head slowly. "Time cannot heal a wound that no one wants to close." His words unsettled her. For the first time since the wedding, fear returned to her heart. Still, Nathan did not let the growing tension stop him. He began teaching the palace guards new techniques, not to fight harder but to fight smarter. He spoke of restraint, of protecting civilians, of courage without cruelty. Many soldiers laughed at him behind his back. But some listened. Some even began to admire him. Lyrian saw the change. The guards who once sneered now bowed with respect. The young cadets looked at Nathan with hope. His way was strange but pure. It made her believe that peace was truly possible. But in the dark corners of the empire, the Iron Wings gathered strength. They stole weapons. They hacked into defense networks. They spread lies across the stars, saying the humans were building secret armies preparing to strike again. Fear began to bloom among the people, and fear, as always, turned to anger. One night during a council meeting, an elder general stood and shouted, "We gave our princess to a human, and what have we gained? Shame, our fleets rot while Earth expands its colonies. He is their spy, not our ally." The room filled with shouts. Lyrian tried to speak, but her voice was drowned. Nathan stayed silent, his jaw tense but calm. When the chaos finally quieted, he stood up. "If I am your enemy," he said, his voice low but strong, "then strike me down now. But if I am your ally, let me prove it, not with words but with actions." The council fell silent. Even those who hated him could not meet his gaze. There was something about his calmness, something unshakable. Later that night, Lyrian found him sitting alone in the training courtyard. The moonlight touched his face, showing the deep scars near his temple, scars from wars that never truly left him. She sat beside him quietly. "You didn't have to stay quiet today," she said softly. "They insulted you." Nathan smiled faintly. "I've learned that anger never changes hearts, Princess. Only patience does." Lyrian looked at him for a long time. "You always carry such calm," she whispered. "How?" He looked up at the stars. "Because I've seen what happens when calm is lost." His words pierced her heart. She realized then how much he carried. The weight of both sides, the hope of two worlds. And even though the palace glittered around them, she felt a chill in the air, as if shadows were gathering beyond the walls. And she was right. That very night, far from the city, a transport ship exploded in orbit. The Iron Wings had made their move. The peace treaty was now in danger. And as alarms echoed through the royal halls, Princess Lyrian finally understood. The war was not over. It had only changed its shape. The night the palace burned began like any other, Soft music played in the grand hall. The stars outside glowed silver through the glass dome ceiling. Princess Lyrian sat beside Nathan at a quiet dinner, listening to the hum of peace that still felt too fragile to trust. She wanted to believe the danger had passed, that the Iron Wings were only rumors. But Nathan's eyes, always watchful, told another story. He never relaxed. Even as he smiled at her gently, she could see the soldier behind the husband, the man who slept lightly, who always kept one hand near the sidearm he never wore. And then, without warning, the world shattered. A thunderous explosion rocked the palace. The ground shook. The lights went out. Screams filled the halls as glass rained down from the ceiling. The peaceful night turned into chaos. Lyrian stumbled to her feet, her heart pounding. "Nathan!" she cried. He was already moving. His voice was firm but calm. "Stay behind me." The air filled with smoke and the sharp smell of plasma. Armed figures burst through the broken doors. Soldiers in dark armor with the Iron Wings emblem glowing red on their chests. Their leader shouted, "Seize the human! Kill the princess if she resists." Lyrian froze. It was happening. The rebellion had begun. Dozens of enemies surrounded them, rifles raised. Nathan's face didn't change. He stepped forward slowly, hands empty. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You're Zalari. Protect your people, not destroy them." The rebels laughed. "We protect our people by ending you, human." The leader raised his weapon. "Fire!" The next moment was a blur. Nathan moved, so fast Lyrian's eyes could hardly follow. Plasma bolts flashed, but none touched him. He twisted, ducked, and deflected a shot with his bare hand, sending sparks across the floor. Then he struck. It wasn't rage. It wasn't madness. It was precision, cold controlled power. His fist hit armor like thunder. Each blow landed with perfect timing. One soldier flew backward into a pillar. Another's weapon was torn from his hand before he even fired. Lyrian stood frozen, watching a man become something more than human. He moved like a storm-given form, graceful, unstoppable. Every step he took felt like an earthquake wrapped in silence. Within seconds, 10 elite Zalari soldiers lay broken across the marble floor. Not dead, only unconscious, defeated without cruelty. The room fell silent except for the crackle of burning walls. Lyrian could hardly breathe. "Nathan," she whispered. How?" He turned toward her, his chest rising and falling slowly, his hands trembling faintly. "We need to move," he said. There will be more, but she couldn't move. She could only stare at him. The man she had thought was calm, fragile even. Now he stood among wreckage, his body glowing faintly under the emergency lights, his eyes burning with a light that didn't look entirely human. When he noticed her fear, his expression softened immediately. He stepped closer, lowering his head slightly. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said quietly. "I never wanted you to." Her voice shook. What are you?" He met her eyes, steady, calm, painfully human. "I'm just a man, Lyrian. A man who refuses to lose anyone else." Before she could answer, another explosion tore through the eastern wing. Nathan grabbed her hand and pulled her through the corridors, moving faster than anyone she'd ever seen. They passed wounded guards, broken walls, fire and chaos. Yet wherever he went, people followed him. His calm became their strength. They reached the royal command room where the Empress's guards tried to fight off the attackers. Lyrian turned to him, voice trembling. "You can't fight them all." Nathan looked out at the sky. Ships were descending like dark stars, the Iron Wings fleet attacking the capital itself. His jaw tightened. "I'll hold them long enough for you to get everyone out." "You'll die," she whispered. He looked at her gently. "Not if I can help it." For a moment their eyes met, human and alien, soldier and princess. Then Nathan stepped out into the burning courtyard, his silhouette framed by flames and falling debris. The soldiers aimed their weapons again, but he didn't slow. He stood alone beneath the shattered sky and whispered something to himself. A human prayer, maybe. before he began to move once more. And from that night on, the legends would say that a single human faced an army, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The dawn that followed was not peaceful. Smoke covered the sky above Zelar's capital. The once sparkling city now burned with fire and fear. The Iron Wings had declared open war. They claimed that the royal family had betrayed the Zelari people by joining with humans. Every loyal soldier was ordered to surrender or die. Princess Lyrian stood on the palace balcony, her eyes wide with disbelief. Across the horizon she saw them coming, an endless wave of black armor and ships bearing the red mark of rebellion. Thousands of soldiers, tanks, and flyers moved toward the palace like a dark tide. She turned to Nathan, panic breaking through her voice. "There are too many. We can't fight them, Nathan. We must escape." Nathan was quiet for a moment, staring at the marching army below. His face was calm, but there was something deep in his eyes, something old and heavy. Then he turned to her and said softly, "If we run now, they'll destroy everything behind us, every man, woman, and child who still believes in peace." Lyrian shook her head, tears forming. "You can't face them alone. They'll kill you." He stepped closer and took her hands gently. "Do you remember what I told you, Lyrian? Strength isn't in the weapon. It's in the one who chooses when to fight." Her lips trembled. "You can't fight an army." He smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But I can stop them long enough for you to live." Before she could answer, explosions thundered from the outer gates. The palace shields flickered, trying to hold. Nathan released her hands and turned to the soldiers gathered near the command room. "Get her to safety," he ordered. "No," Lyrian cried, grabbing his arm. "I won't leave you." He looked at her, his gaze soft but firm. "You must. You are their hope, Lyrian. If you die, this war never ends. But if I die, maybe it will." His words broke her heart. The guards hesitated, afraid to separate them, but Nathan nodded once. "Go." His voice carried an authority that even Zelari soldiers could not disobey. 2 guards gently pulled Lyrian back, though she fought against them, her tears falling freely. Nathan walked out through the broken palace gates, his boots crunching against the debris. The air smelled of smoke and blood. The rebel army was gathering in the great courtyard. 50,000 soldiers armed with plasma cannons and mechs, waiting to crush the last defense of peace. The Iron Wing commander stood at the front laughing when he saw him. "So it's true," the commander shouted through his helmet. "The mighty human comes to die alone." Nathan didn't respond. He walked forward until he stood between the rebels and the palace, alone on the white stone ground. Behind him, the palace towers glimmered faintly through the rising smoke. The commander raised his arm. "One man against an army. Tell me, human, do you think you are a god?" Nathan's voice was calm, almost a whisper carried by the wind. "No," he said. "I'm just a man." "But that's enough." The commander laughed and gave the order. "Fire!" The army unleashed hell. Thousands of plasma bolts turned the air to fire. But when the smoke cleared, Nathan still stood, untouched. The ground around him glowed with heat, his boots leaving deep cracks in the marble. Up on the palace balcony, Lyrian gasped, her heart pounding. She could see him, small but steady, standing like a wall between her world and destruction. Nathan looked up once, as if he could see her through the smoke. And somehow she felt it, a silent promise in his eyes. Then he moved. He ran forward, faster than sound, straight into the heart of the army. The Iron Wings thought they were fighting a man. But that day, they faced something else, something born from human will, from pain, from love too deep to break. As the battle roared, Princess Lyrian fell to her knees, whispering through tears, "Come back to me, Nathan. Please come back." And though the sky was full of thunder and flame, the faintest echo of his voice reached her heart. "I'll always come back." The sky of Zelar was no longer blue. It burned red and gold, filled with smoke, fire, and the sound of war. The Iron Wings had come in full force, an army of 50,000 soldiers, armored mechs, and attack crafts. Their goal was simple: kill the human, destroy the royal line, and end the dream of peace. And standing alone against them was Commander Nathan Cole, a single human man. From the balcony, Princess Lyrian watched, frozen between awe and fear. Every instinct in her heart screamed for him to run, to save himself. But Nathan didn't move to escape. He stood calmly, his eyes scanning the battlefield like a soldier reading an old memory. The first wave of Iron Wings attacked. Plasma bolts rained down in endless light. The ground shook. The palace walls trembled. But Nathan moved like something beyond human. He dashed forward, faster than the eye could follow. He leapt through explosions, using nothing but his body and will. He slammed his fist into the ground and the shockwave rippled outward, throwing armored soldiers into the air like leaves in a storm. He grabbed a fallen plasma rifle, twisted it apart and used the energy core as a weapon. A single strike from it shattered a mech's chest plate. When the smoke cleared, he was still standing. Surrounded by wreckage, his uniform torn, his body bruised but unbroken. From above, Lyrian whispered his name, her eyes wide with tears. Nathan. He didn't hear her, but somehow he seemed to feel her watching. His movements grew fiercer, faster, as if her gaze gave him strength. The Iron Wing commander screamed into his comms, "All units, crush him. He's just one man." But the soldiers hesitated. They had never seen anything like this. The human didn't fight like a machine. He fought like a storm, wild yet controlled, furious yet full of purpose. Every time he fell, he rose again. Every time he bled, he stood taller. He wasn't killing them. That was what terrified them most. He broke weapons, disabled suits, destroyed armor. But he never struck to kill. He fought not to conquer but to protect. The battle lasted hours. The ground turned black with scorch marks. The sky rumbled as enemy ships exploded in flames. Nathan's voice could barely be heard, but when he spoke, his words cut through the chaos. "No more war," he shouted. "No more hate." Lyrian pressed her hand against her heart. Each word felt like thunder inside her chest, but even storms can fade. As the battle dragged on, Nathan's body began to slow. His breath grew heavy, his movements less sharp. Blood ran down his arm, bright against the dust. The Iron Wing commander saw his weakness and grinned. "Now you fall, human." He charged forward in a massive mech, raising a plasma blade taller than a house. Nathan looked up, exhausted but unafraid. He reached out his hand, not for a weapon but for focus. The air around him shimmered. His eyes glowed faintly with blue light. Then he moved one last time. He struck the ground with his fist. The world erupted. A shockwave of raw energy burst outward, flattening everything in its path. The mech shattered like glass. The Iron Wing soldiers were thrown back, their armor cracking. The ground split open, dust rising like a storm around him, and then silence. The battle ended. The army that had come to destroy him now lay scattered, broken, and trembling. Not one soldier was dead. Nathan stood among them, swaying, his chest heaving. His body was covered in wounds, but his eyes still burned with quiet fire. He looked up toward the palace balcony. Lyrian was there, tears streaming down her face. She ran down the steps, ignoring the guard's warnings, and fell to her knees beside him. "Nathan, please stay with me." He smiled weakly, his voice barely a whisper. "It's over. They won't fight again." Lyrian touched his face, trembling. "You saved us. You saved everyone." He closed his eyes for a moment, his breath shallow. "No, we saved them. You gave me something to fight for, Lyrian." The wind carried the smell of dust and peace. The Iron Wing soldiers dropped their weapons, staring at the human who had defeated them without hate. And for the first time in their history, the proud warriors of Zelar bowed their heads to a man from Earth. That day, the galaxy learned that humanity's greatest power wasn't in machines or weapons. It was in the heart that refused to give up. Even when the universe stood against it, the morning after the battle was quiet. The world of Zelar, once filled with smoke and fire, now lay under a calm golden sky. Broken machines were scattered across the plains, but no cries of pain were heard. The war was over. Lyrian sat beside Nathan's bed inside the royal healing chamber. The doctors worked for hours to save him. His body was strong but torn, his energy drained from the power he had unleashed. He slept pale and still, his chest rising weakly with each breath. Lyrian had not moved from his side. She held his hand tightly, afraid that if she let go he might slip away. Her tears had dried, but her heart still trembled. She remembered every moment, his stand against the army, his words, his courage. He had done what no army, no technology, no ancient power could do. He had stopped the war, alone. When Nathan finally opened his eyes, sunlight was spilling through the windows. His vision blurred at first, then cleared, and he saw her, the princess with silver hair, eyes full of worry, and a soft smile trembling on her lips. "You're awake," she whispered, her voice shaking. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "Is it over?" Lyrian nodded. "Yes, the Iron Wing surrendered. The Council of Worlds has declared peace. They saw what you did, Nathan. They said no human should have that power, but they also said no human had ever used it to save lives." Nathan smiled weakly. "Good, then it was worth it." She looked at him, her eyes shining. "Why did you do it? You could have destroyed them all. Yet you spared every one of them. Even after what they did to you, to us." Nathan turned his head slowly toward the window. Outside, the people of Zelar were rebuilding, humans and aliens working side by side. For the first time, there were no barriers between them. "Because," he said softly, "that's what makes us human. We fight, yes, but we fight so others don't have to." His words made her chest ache with emotion. She realized then what kind of man he truly was, and not a soldier of destruction, but a guardian of hope. Days passed. Nathan grew stronger. Every morning, Lyrian would walk with him through the royal gardens. Flowers that had been long forbidden to bloom during the war now opened again. The air smelled of new beginnings. The people greeted them both, not as a princess and her human husband, but as two souls who had saved their world. Children ran after Nathan, calling him Star Guardian. The elders bowed deeply. Even the Iron Wing survivors offered respect, promising to rebuild what they had broken. One evening, as the twin suns set beyond the horizon, Lyrian and Nathan stood on the palace balcony. The light painted the sky in pink and gold. For a while, they said nothing. The silence between them was warm. Finally, she whispered, "When I married you, I thought I was ending a war with a symbol. But you became the reason peace exists at all." Nathan smiled and took her hand. "And when I married you, I thought I was just a soldier following orders. But you showed me what home feels like." Tears welled in her eyes. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You are not just human anymore, Nathan. You are part of Zelar now, part of our story." He looked at the stars above them, endless, glittering, peaceful. "Then let's write the next chapter together." As night fell, the lights of both human and alien cities shone together, forming a pattern in the dark, the same symbol Nathan had worn on his armor. Unity. The story of the alien princess and the human warrior spread across the galaxy. It was told on every world, in every language, for generations to come. They said that when Zelar's skies turned red with war, a human came and made them blue again. And in every version of the story, one truth remained, that a single human heart full of love and courage had done what empires could not. He had brought peace not by power, but by compassion. He had shown the universe what it truly meant to be human.